All right, guys. So a couple of days ago, we covered Cory Booker and Gavin Newsom absolutely fumbling on basic questions when it comes to AIPAC or the influence of the pro-Israel lobby on American politics, especially as a vast majority of the Democratic voter base has fully turned against Israel at this point. Now, I got two more examples here for you guys of Democratic establishment politicians fumbling once again on this question. And this one here with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro on the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne is somehow worse than the Booker one and somehow worse than the Gavin Newsom one. Now, just quickly before we get into this clip here, as a reminder about who we're talking about and some of his history when it comes to this issue, here from the Times of Israel, their headline was, "Shapiro seeks to downplay his time as an IDF volunteer after a college op-ed resurfaced." And in this college op-ed, which was called "Peace Not Possible," he said Palestinians will not coexist peacefully. They do not have the capabilities to establish their own homeland and make it successful, even with the aid of Israel and the United States. They are too battle-minded to be able to establish a peaceful homeland of their own. So this is the kind of guy that we're talking about. Let's go ahead and jump into this clip and bear with me, because I'm going to have to pause a lot as he says absolutely unhinged things throughout this.
The article in the New York Times about Democrats pulling away from AIPAC. So clearly it's having some impact on them politically if they feel like they got to.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's become a political issue. You've used it as a political issue. You've questioned federal representatives when they're on here on that. I mean, I think if I can say this to you, you know, not trying to offend you here, but I think it's a little bit of a shortcut and a little bit of a lazy question. I think the better question is, how do you really feel about Israel? How do you feel about a two-state solution? How do you feel about the war? How do you feel about, you know, the hostages or hungry kids or what have you? I think demanding answers on those questions is more important than, hey, what about this lobbying group or that lobbying group?
Or what do you say to the critics?
Okay, I mean, number one, when he outlines all of those different, things that we should be talking about instead of the Israel lobby, he doesn't, throughout the entirety of the rest of this clip, actually address what his position on any of those things actually is. And by the way, when it comes to a two-state solution, when any Zionist or pro-Israel politician throws out the vague notion of a two-state solution in this kind of a conversation, that should be a major red flag for anybody. Because what are we really talking about on the ground when it comes to that proposition, right? If you're willing to continue to send weapons to Israel, you're willing to continue to give them diplomatic cover on the international stage, you're willing to essentially continue to write them a blank check as they spend years, if not decades, making a two-state solution fundamentally impossible. They continue to this day on a daily basis, expanding violently their illegal settlements in the West Bank, fragmenting what would be a hypothetical Palestinian state into a million different enclaves. They've completely destroyed Gaza, making it fundamentally uninhabitable at this point, which was their goal from the outset. When we're looking at what's actually happening on the ground, what the status quo is, you can't possibly answer with a hypothetical two-state solution and expect that that's going to be some sort of a satisfactory answer. It's just not. Okay, we're not going to accept that at this point. Israel gets to be their apartheid ethno-state, and Palestinians, I guess, can try to make something out of this fragmented nothing that Israel has left them with as they continue to live under occupation. Okay, we're not accepting that. Now, on the first thing there, it's a lazy question. What are we talking about here? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that are dumped into American elections in order to what exactly? In his view, do nothing? They're just giving hundreds of millions of dollars to campaigns for the fun of it, just for the love of the game? Is that what we're saying here? And by the way, this goes for other lobbying organizations other than AIPAC, whether it's the pharmaceutical lobby or the health insurance lobby or the oil lobby. Are we actually saying that they're dumping all of this money into American elections for no reason, with no expectation for a return on investment when it comes to that? I mean, it's insulting to your intelligence that he would propose that. And by the way, when it comes to AIPAC, it's not as if it's up in the air as to what their goal is in spending this money. For example, in one of the recent election cycles, they spent over $20 million in one Democratic House primary in order to unseat Jamal Bowman, who was a principled critic of Israel. Like, this absolutely has a massive outsized influence on American politics. Let's stop pretending that it doesn't. And by the way, I showed you guys this polling yesterday. His own voter base disagrees with him on this. I mean, this is polling of Democratic voters in swing states. You look at AIPAC, you look at the pro-Israel lobby, completely underwater. 52-14 when it comes to the pro-Israel lobby. So your own voter base disagrees with you, that this isn't a big deal or that it's a lazy question or whatever the case may be. No, it's an entirely fair litmus test. And nobody should be supporting, whether on the right, the left, the center, nobody should be supporting any candidate who takes a single dollar from organizations like AIPAC. But we can continue here.
Who argue that U.S. foreign policy on Israel is often shaped not by national interest, but by the lobbying strength of these people.
I think that's a fair conversation to have. And I think it should be on any elected official at the federal level to say, hey, I'm listening to this group. But by the way, there's groups on other sides too. I'm listening to that group. But at the end of the day, we want our federal representatives to be able to sit here in this chair and answer the questions about why they voted A or why they voted B or why they feel a certain way. And
okay, we first off, we don't just want politicians to be able to sit down and explain away their positions on this. No, we want you to change your votes, right? We want our senators, our House reps to stop voting to send weapons to Israel, right? There's a fundamental difference between sitting down and having a conversation and listening versus substantively changing your vote on that. And then secondly, he says he's listening to these organizations as if they're not dumping millions of dollars into these election cycles. Like, that's not a conversation where you're sitting at a round table with a bunch of different diverse opinions and you're just having people hash it out in front of you and you're soaking it all in. No, they're literally paying you. They are funding your ability to be in this position of power in the first place. All right, that's not just, oh, I'm casually listening to all sides of this debate. No, it's not.
I think it's just a little lazy to say, oh, it's got to be because of that interest group. Maybe someone actually believes those views, or maybe someone feels strongly about that particular way.
Is it possible?
Which, by the way, is almost worse. Like, I can understand the politician who's just fully corrupted by the pro-Israel lobby or by any other lobby for that matter. What I can't understand is somebody who, after 2 years of the most well-documented genocide in human history, can look at that and say, yeah, I genuinely support this. I support continuing to send weapons to Israel. I support their so-called self-defense that has annihilated tens and tens of thousands of innocent children. I can't really get behind any person morally or politically or on any level who would genuinely support continuing to send weapons to Israel.
For an elected official to get millions of dollars from, corporate donors or even lobbying interests and still really work for the people over those?
Yeah. Look, I mean, you've asked me a few questions on that, and clearly I know you're bothered by that. I think we're all bothered by the amount of money in politics, particularly the dark money that nobody kind of knows where it's coming from. But I think, largely the voters, I'll just speak to Pennsylvania, they're smart. They know who's on their side. They see it. I got voters who sometimes show up and vote for Republicans, sometimes vote for Democrats. They get it. I think that dark money can pollute it sometimes, can crowd out the voices sometimes. But overall, I think voters are a lot smarter and they can see through that.
When's the last time you told a donor no, even though it costs you politically?
That's happened many times in my career.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting anything unethical or illegal or the donor was trying to do anything unethical or illegal. But I've had them, sometimes say to me, well, I believe in this and that and the other thing. And I'll say, look, you know what? Keep your money. I'm happy to be your friend, but I don't believe in that. And I'm not going to do that. And again, nothing wrong or unethical or illegal, but they've got a different view on things than I do. And frankly, I'm not interested in, having their support if we're going to look at things differently on those fronts.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you.
I mean, he can't even come up with a single example throughout his career specifically in which he has turned down something that a donor wanted, and then he goes into downplaying even the concept that one of his mega donors might want something in return and might be able to have an ease of access to him that your average working class person doesn't, and be able to be in a position to ask for something in the first place. I mean, he's downplaying the concept that any of these lobbying organizations have any sort of influence on American politics. Like, you're talking about a system of legalized and open corruption and bribery, right? And he sort of condescendingly refers to the voters and says, well, they're smart enough to decide which politician is truly representing them. It's like, no, this entire system is fucked beyond belief. And yeah, the voters are smart enough to see that the system is wildly corrupted and that a vast majority of Democrats and Republicans serve billionaires. They serve corporate interests. They serve, foreign lobbies like the Israel lobby. We're smart enough to see through bullshit artist politicians like you who deny that that's even happening in the first place.
I don't have a problem with people taking the money. It's just that when you take the money and you're beholden to them, that's what I would tell elected officials. You don't have to be beholden to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I feel blessed. I've got a whole lot of people who have invested in my campaigns over time. And by the way, I'm sure some of them don't agree with some of the things that I stand for, but they believe in my approach to governing and the work I'm trying to do to help other people. And I feel blessed to have their support. But I can tell you there's not one donor or one group or whatever that I go, oh man, I got to please them, so I'm going to do something that I disagree with. I mean, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
People will always assume it's AIPAC, though. AIPAC is the boogeyman in all of politics.
It's code for a lot.
Yeah.
And it's what I said to you before. And again, I mean this with respect. I think in some ways it's a lazy shortcut.
Okay, so you guys tell me how you read into that last statement there. When he says that it's code for a lot, I'm pretty sure that's a not so veiled accusation of anti-Semitism there, where he's saying, yeah, people are really only bringing up and focusing on AIPAC and the Israel lobby because they might be a little bit anti-Semitic, and so they're fixated on that. I mean, come the fuck on, dude. Again, guys like Josh Shapiro do not deserve your support in any way, shape, or form. Any politician who not only takes AIPAC money, but who takes lobbying money and then pretends like this isn't corruption, right? You shouldn't trust them. You should not trust them. Okay, they're not dumping this money into our campaigns for no reason. They're doing it with an expectation of return. Now, moving on here, we also have Seth Moulton, who is attempting to unseat Ed Markey, and he recently came out and he said he's going to be rejecting AIPAC money. Right, that's what he's saying on the surface level here. And a couple of things on that. Number one, it does kind of show the fact that he even feels like it's a political benefit for him to publicly come out and reject AIPAC, that's a positive thing. That's a pretty monumental shift in American politics, right? Because this is a guy who's not a left-wing politician. He's not a principled critic of Israel. He's not pro-Palestine in any way. This is like a national security type, like establishment corporate Democrat that we're talking about here. And even he feels like it's a net cost for him to be associated with AIPAC. So that's a massive signal there in terms of where the Democratic voter base is and in terms of him understanding that. And then the other point that I want to get to that doesn't have anything to do with Israel, but it's incredibly frustrating to me, is that corporate establishment Democrats have at this point totally co-opted the demand that many, especially young people, have for a new generation of leadership. Because when we demand a new generation of leadership, we're not literally just talking about age, right? Obviously, we had the issues with Joe Biden, who was totally and clearly senile and looked like he was on death's door while he was trying to run his re-election campaign. We saw him collapse at the debate stage and everything like that. We all understand that there is an issue with the gerontocracy. There is an issue with, us having an average age in the Senate of like 70 at this point, but that's not the only issue, right? For example, I would take an 85-year-old Bernie Sanders over, an Alyssa Slotkin, who I don't know is in her 40s, but is like a CIA corporate Democrat, right? The substance of what you stand for actually matters. It's not just the age difference. And so this guy, Seth Moulton, is trying to co-opt that new generation type of rhetoric and running as I'm the new generation, the younger face on the Democratic Party, as he's trying to unseat Ed Markey, who is a more left-wing member of the Senate. So that's just another piece of this, election coming up that I thought was incredibly frustrating. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into this clip here where he was on MSNBC and he was asked about him rejecting AIPAC money. And he basically says in this clip, yeah, I reject the AIPAC money, but I also still want to send weapons to Israel. So I'm not really changing policy when it comes to this. I mean, this is amazing.
Congressman, you announced on Thursday that you're no longer going to accept donations from AIPAC. And I'm wondering if you can tell us more about your thinking and how you got to that decision. Was it a response to the base and the fact that recent polling has shown that Democrats do not support what has happened in Gaza and that they've pulled away from support for Israel? Or is it just that you yourself have seen the images of what's transpired in this war and that it's reshaped the way you see the United States' relationship to Israel?
Look, the United States' relationship to Israel is incredibly important, but I strongly disagree with the current Israeli government under Bibi Netanyahu. And I've been very outspoken about this for quite some time. I mean, in fact, I wrote an op-ed just after October 7th, right after those heinous attacks, saying that Bibi Netanyahu needs to have a political plan for the future, for Palestinians and for Israelis to live peacefully side by side. He still doesn't have that plan. So after months and months of pressuring the Israeli government, pressuring AIPAC itself to not just follow the Israeli government, I finally decided that I just cannot accept contributions from an organization whose mission is to support the current government in Israel.
Congressman, let me just follow up on that really quickly. How do you reconcile rejecting AIPAC money but still voting for the same policies that AIPAC is advocating for? You have continuously supported sending offensive weapons.
Not true. I've frequently disagreed with AIPAC. I
know you disagreed with AIPAC, but you have been voting for...
Wait, slow down.
I know, but I didn't finish my question. I didn't finish my question. I was saying you voted for sending weapons to Israel, which is something AIPAC has advocated for.
Okay, so sure, there are some votes that we'll agree on.
There are some votes that we will agree on. So, in other words, this is a good example of don't fall for the head fake, because when I watched that clip, right, and after seeing what he said about AIPAC, this reads very clearly to me as somebody who is able to understand that the Democratic Party base, as I showed you with that polling data, they're overwhelmingly against Israel at this point. They're overwhelmingly against the Israel lobby and organizations like AIPAC. And so he can read the room. And he's saying, again, this is a net political benefit for me to disassociate with AIPAC. But fundamentally, he's not changing his policy here. Right? He's saying, yeah, well, maybe I'll agree with them on everything that AIPAC supports. I just won't be taking their money. So again, the substance matters, not just the surface level stuff here. Now, we also have a couple other updates on AIPAC, because again, it seems like even they recognize that they're extremely unpopular right now. And by the way, not just with Democrats or with young people, but also with a lot of Republicans as well, are starting to turn very strongly against the Israel lobby. And so now they're resorting to this. They say here from Chris with reporting from Matthew 80. He says AIPAC is now apparently having their donors give money to candidates directly through some shady back channel rather than through their own organization. This allows them to avoid the stigma of being AIPAC funded. The site appears to be using Democracy Engine LLC as the vendor, meaning that they may be able to skirt FEC requirements to earmark the donation. But what's also clear is that donors are being sent this link from AIPAC, driving donations without any transparency of what's happening. So essentially, AIPAC recognizes that being labeled as an AIPAC candidate is not necessarily a positive thing right now. And so they're basically sending like fundraising emails to their donors, but instead of telling them to donate through AIPAC to a candidate, they're saying, here, just donate directly to them as an individual donor, right? So you still have the AIPAC donors who are funding these candidates, but now you won't know that they're backed by AIPAC because AIPAC is running it through this back channel Democracy Engine LLC. So again, some shady stuff going on here. So let's keep our eyes and ears perked up at this moment, because it seems like candidates who say I'm ditching AIPAC, candidates who say I don't take money from AIPAC, that may not necessarily be the case. So you have to actually follow the substance on what their positions are on any of these given issues. Now, next thing here, because AIPAC, again, seeing what the room is saying, is trying to do a little bit of a rebrand as a pro-America organization. And they put out this ad that's for some reason filled with a bunch of AI generated content, seemingly. Let's go ahead and watch this little clip here of their supposed rebrand.
Talk about AIPAC.
Today, AIPAC.
On Capitol Hill, AIPAC.
AIPAC.
You may have heard our name, but how much do you really know about AIPAC? AIPAC is an American organization that works to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship. This partnership advances America's interests and democratic values and helps keep Israel safe. Our 5 million members are U.S. citizens, Democrats and Republicans from every part of the country who urge our elected leaders to enact pro-Israel policies. This includes expanding America's defense partnership with Israel, supporting life-saving security assistance, confronting Iran and its terror proxies, and promoting peace and normalization. Being pro-Israel is good policy, and AIPAC members make sure it's good politics, too. We raise money to help elect pro-Israel candidates for Congress from both parties. And we take the political fight to our opponents. helping defeat anti-Israel candidates running for the House or Senate. AIPAC is leading the fight in Washington to secure the future of the U.S.-Israel relationship. The actions of pro-Israel Americans today will help determine the future of this bond and the fate of both countries.
Okay, so they're rebranding as pro-America, right? And they say that it's, and I don't know why that entire ad that they put together here seems to be entirely AI generated. Seems kind of weird, but they say it's good politics and it's good policy. Now, number one, in terms of it being good politics to be aggressively pro-Israel and uniformly pro-Israel, I think if it was good politics, you wouldn't have to dump hundreds of millions of dollars into elections to finance against critics of Israel if it was actually just by itself good politics to run as a pro-Israel candidate, right? There's a reason why if you actually go and look at the money that AIPAC spends on advertising campaigns, that when they attack people like Jamal Bowman, overwhelmingly those attack ads have nothing to do with Israel. I remember they were attacking Cori Bush and they were attacking Jamal Bowman as they're not loyal to Joe Biden, they're not real Democrats, they're too radical on economic policy or whatever the case may be. They usually don't focus their advertisements on Israel because they recognize that being aggressively pro-Israel is actually not good politics. I mean, look at John Fetterman right now, who has an abysmal rating with Democrats. In fact, he's more popular with Republicans at this point than Democrats because he's basically made his entire shtick after having his stroke being pro-Israel no matter what, justifying every war crime that they commit. So it's not good politics by itself, so much so that apparently now you're having to hide the candidates that your people, your funders are donating to, right? Wouldn't have to be doing that if it was genuinely good politics. And then on the good policy, again, no, it's not. It's not good policy for the United States of America. It's not good policy for the American people. We dump tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, throughout the years into financing and into arming Israel as they continue to pick fights with every country surrounding them, trying to drag us into wars, whether it's with Iran or whether it's with Benjamin Netanyahu going before Congress to lobby for the invasion of Iraq back in the day. Like, this is not a good relationship for the American people on basically any front whatsoever. Not to mention that over the last 2 years of the United States being fully complicit in the genocide in Gaza, giving financial support, giving military support, giving diplomatic cover on the international stage, we've obliterated our own reputation and standing, or whatever was left of it. We've isolated ourselves, especially on this issue, from basically the entire rest of the world at this point, and we've destroyed any sort of notion of international law mattering or human rights mattering. This has not been positive from an American's perspective in any possible way that you want to look at it. So good luck with that rebrand, I guess. Now, again, final things here. We had the polling data. I showed you guys this yesterday. I won't go through all of it, but it's pretty clear where the Democratic voter base stands. So Democrats like Josh Shapiro, Democrats like Cory Booker or Gavin Newsom or Seth Moulton, you got to understand the massive discrepancy that exists between your voter base and the Democratic Party establishment, right? It's essentially an inverse of one another. I mean, we have for months, I mean, if not for longer than that, had a majority of Democrats say that Israel's committing a genocide. I mean, this one poll here from Quinnipiac, 77% of Democrats say that Israel's committing a genocide. 6 in 10 voters say that we should stop sending weapons to Israel. I mean, again, 80% of those polled support an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. 59% of Democrats say that they're more sympathetic to Palestinians than Israelis. I mean, the polling data on this is very clear. There is a massive gulf between the Democratic voter base and the Democratic Party as a whole. And as this goes on, this is not going to get easier for Josh Shapiro or Gavin Newsom or the rest of them. You are going to have to figure out a way to change your policy on this. Okay, we're not going to accept, the surface level things like what we saw from Seth Moulton and saying, oh, I reject AIPAC money, but I still support everything Israel does. We are not going to accept that, right? This is a litmus test, and it's a litmus test for a reason, because as many people have said before, if you can't fight against a genocide, right? One of the easiest things to stand and to fight against, right? Not exactly a high bar that we're asking for you to clear here. But if you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to fight for anything, right? You are telegraphing to the American people when you take pro-Israel money that you are not beholden to your voter base, right? You don't care that a vast majority of your party disagrees with you on this issue. You're beholden to a different entity at that point, right? And people are not going to stand for it. We're not going to vote for politicians who are taking lobbying money. We're not going to vote for politicians who are taking corporate money or billionaire money for that matter. So this is a litmus test. Again, you're not going to be able to fight fascism. You're not going to be able to fight against anything or for anything if you can't stand up on this very simple issue. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Again, Democrats got to figure this shit out because this is going to be an issue moving forward. It's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying